State legislative races might not always make the front page, but the decisions made in Indianapolis impact everything from how we care for our aging neighbors to whether Hoosiers can afford basic utilities to how our schools and small businesses thrive. Today, we dig into one of those races. In Indiana House District 29, a community anchored by Noblesville and fast growth, changing needs, and a fresh political energy. She's a newcomer to seeking elected office, a public health professional and small business owner who decided to run because she saw firsthand how state policy affects real families. Welcome back to the show. Today we're joined by Coumba Kebe, who is running for state representative in Indiana's 29th district, a seat that includes Noblesville and nearby communities. Coumba is a public health professional and a healthcare consultant who has spent years working with families, caregivers, and business across the state. After watching policy decisions in the State House, especially cuts to healthcare programs like Medicaid, create real hardship for seniors and families, she changed her mind about running and filed her candidacy in January as a part of a new wave of local leaders aiming to bring accountability and people first problem solving to Indiana's legislature. We'll talk about the issues she's hearing most in the doorsteps of District 29, how her professional experience shapes her priorities, and what she believes needs to change in the state's approach to healthcare, education, infrastructure, or more. Coumba, welcome to the show.
Well, thanks for having me, and thanks for the great intro.
Noblesville has experienced rapid growth over the past decade. What infrastructure investments do you believe are the most urgent right now to keep up with that growth without sacrificing quality of life?
Yeah, so I think that personally, as a constituent, our local government in Noblesville has done a pretty decent job of balancing, development while also preserving our charm, our Noblesville charm, which is something that I don't think happens by accident because the people who live here are making local decisions. And I think we do need to stay intentional to make sure that like growth doesn't unintentionally push out people that have lived in our communities forever, such as seniors and longtime residents who might have built their lives here and potentially getting priced out. So it's important that as we are thinking about infrastructure investments, that we think carefully about certain housing options. We think about property tax pressures, and we think about community support and just like physical infrastructure investments, like water lines and things like that, in order to ensure that we don't drive costs up as we develop.
Housing affordability is becoming a real concern in Hamilton County, including Noblesville.
Mhm.
What role should the state play in expanding affordable housing while still respecting local planning and zoning decisions?
So this is an interesting one because it kind of plays off of my original answer. I believe that at the state level, the responsibility is to remove barriers, but like try to create incentives that help communities expand different housing options. But we still have to respect local planning and local zoning decisions. I want to support things like workforce housing and senior friendly housing and mix different developments, but we can't mandate that from the state level. I think most importantly, if we're going to solve this housing crisis, it's not the state mandating and making decisions for the local government. We have to come together and decide on what works for the communities that we're serving, because the people who live here are working at the local government and making decisions for the people. And so it's just important that the state doesn't start to mandate decisions on their own without input from the people who live here.
District 29 includes families drawn by strong schools, but Indiana consistently ranks low in teacher pay and school funding stability.
Mhm.
What specific changes would you advocate for at the State House to better support public education in this district?
Well, one, we have to come to terms with the fact that public education is not optional, it is a right. And it's a requirement for a government to provide. That's first. Then we have to make sure that schools have predictable funding. The reason why I think schools have a really hard time is because if we make changes to property taxes, it impacts their funding. That's simply not fair. I don't have the perfect solution, but there has to be some sort of bipartisan policy that says schools get this type of state funding at all times so that they can properly budget and plan and pay their educators more. And so we just need to make a better, make funding more consistent and make sure that we're not just doing short term fixes and public schools are taking the hit.
Property taxes are a frequent concern among homeowners and seniors in Noblesville. How would you balance property tax relief with the need to fully fund schools, infrastructure, and public safety?
So this one's always tough for me because I own a home, I pay property taxes, and I would love relief. But I also think we have to be honest about what property taxes fund and support. They support our local infrastructure, they support our roads, they support our public education as it stands today. They support our public safety teams, meaning our police officers, our firefighters who are being negatively impacted because of Senate Bill 1. And so when we talk about making changes to property taxes, it's important that people understand what they fund. And when we make changes, if the state does not fully backfill that funding, local communities are left with fewer options. So I'm all for talking about property tax reform that makes sense, but it does not remove the state's responsibility to fund local infrastructure and to fund local communities. We don't just get to pull that money out and say you got your relief, but you got to figure out your everything else on your own with no state funding. Some communities don't have ambulances right now, rural communities, because of funding cuts. That is terrifying. Like, it, how do we save lives when it takes 45 minutes to get an ambulance to a county because the state refuses to fund critical services? We just have to start thinking about property taxes differently. Yes, it sounds great that someone introduced a bill to remove property taxes, but what are you going to lose with that?
Access to healthcare, especially mental health services, is uneven across the state. What steps should the state take to expand access to mental and behavioral health care for families, students, and seniors in your district?
So there's little to no public health like knowledge at the state house, I feel like. There aren't a lot of people who have had real life experience with the healthcare crisis that we're facing. So one, we have to do a lot of education at the state house for people to understand that it doesn't matter how you slice or dice it, there is a healthcare crisis and you have to address it. It doesn't like and you can't just cut your way out of this because the people who need care don't go away and it will have long-term impacts, right? So that's one. First, we just got to get on the same page that there is a crisis. And then we have to listen to the data. I mean, what hurts about this from a public health perspective is none of this is shocking. We've seen this data forever, but unfortunately, our representatives and our senators have decided to turn a blind eye to data and to turn a blind eye to evidence backed policies and just cut, cut, cut. So we just have to start having these honest conversations about that. Like, there is no additional financial savings to make when the growth and the need of healthcare services are there. There's nothing you can do about that. We just have to figure out where do we get the funds to support the healthcare needs of the people.
Many residents of Noblesville commute for work, while others rely on small businesses and local employers. How do you see the state supporting both workforce development and small business growth in this district?
Again, this goes back to local partnership. You can't just start investing and opening these massive private equity interests like companies, right? And just not partnering with local governments and just approving a one size fit all solution for our local communities. Like, it's just a matter of we need to focus on workforce development with small businesses and with local governments through, I don't know, like you see other states do like apprenticeships, they do like local partnerships, different flexible programs. But we have to at least engage with our local government and be like, how should we go about this investment? Not just decide that a private airplane thing is required in Fort Wayne now. I just saw that he built up in Fort Wayne. And it's like, okay, what value add is that bringing to people within the community? How many jobs is that bringing it for people within the local community? And so, yeah, it's just we need more transparency from the state level and partnership with our local governments.
Environmental concerns like water quality, green space preservation, and responsible development matter to many voters here. What policies would you support to ensure growth in District 29 is sustainable and environmentally responsible?
The first thing I think about is data centers. Like, data centers bring little to no value to our local communities, so we can't even let them consider thinking about expanding data centers even further. Not only do they not bring jobs, they are detrimental to our environment, detrimental to our health. And there's this bubble. We may not even need these data centers that they are building. Who knows, like in a couple years as AI evolves. So that's number one. And let me be clear, I embrace technology, but we have to slow down and think about how do we coexist with the growth of technology. And by not doing any research and just letting them pop these things up in our communities is not the best approach for our environment. They suck up our water and they boost up our energy bills, and we end up paying the costs on all fronts, not just money, but health and environmentally. And then part two is like, we have to stop pretending that this current form of energy is sustainable forever. We have to start looking at different energy, renewable energy options, and being open to that so that we can create a more sustainable source of energy to support our communities.
Indiana's General Assembly has passed several laws that shift power away from local governments. Where do you stand on local control, and how would you represent Noblesville's interest when state policies conflict with local priorities?
Well, I'm going to take a step back and answer from a constituent perspective. I live in Noblesville, and I'm pretty happy with where I live. I think we have great public safety teams. Hamilton County is one of the safest counties in the country, and definitely one of the safest in Indiana. And that's not by accident. That is because we have local leaders who live here, who have lived here, who are talking to constituents, who are in the community, and who are doing everything they can to balance development while also preserving the things that we love in Noblesville. So if it ain't broken, why are we fixing it? Why are we inserting our little dirty fingers into it and trying to make changes? Partner and stay out of decisions that are supposed to be local. And like, maybe we can talk down the road about government efficiency and how it's set up, but right now, this is just not a top priority, in my opinion.
As a Democratic candidate in a competitive district, how do you plan to build coalitions and represent constituents who may not share all of your political views?
Yes. So I think one, it's important to acknowledge that as a constituent, you're never going to agree with your representative 100%. You're never, and then as a representative, you're never going to see eye to eye as with your constituents at all times. But the way that I intend to approach leadership is through transparency and conversation, because I think everything can be solved by people just sitting down and having an exchange of information in a way that is consumable. And I think that that is what's missing in our government leadership. People do not know, people who are in positions of power do not know how to sit down with their constituents and explain things in a manner that makes sense to them, right? And to me, that's how I plan to do it. I have no problem sitting across from someone who may not have voted for me, who may not have liked me, but saying, I represent you too, right? Like, I am supposed to hear you out. And honestly, from the other side of it, I was a constituent who reached out to my representative who was ignored, even though I felt so strongly and convicted about the challenges we were facing. And that is something I don't ever want someone to experience that is a constituent of mine. And so it's important that we have honest conversation and that you know that I'm going to speak the truth, even if it means us getting a little uncomfortable so that we can move forward and see and have a little bit more respect for each other and try to get to a point where we can meet in the middle. So it's not a scary thing to sit across from someone that you don't agree with. And maybe even sometimes they might not like me, and that's okay. But I'm still going to be there and stand in front of you because I'm representing you. That's my job.
Finally, for voters in Noblesville and across the district who may be undecided or disengaged, what would you say is at stake in this race? And why should they trust you to represent them at the state house?
If I'm being totally honest, I think at this point we have to decide how are we going to show up as a people when it comes to humanity and just like human rights and dignity. I am someone who I can't turn off my moral compass when I am working, when I'm making a decision. And I believe that they say every election is important, but this one is important in a different way. This one is not just about, I like this candidate. This is about who are we as a people and what type of example do we want to set for each other and for the rest of the world on what's right, what's wrong. And that's why this election is so deep for me and why it was worth me giving up and sacrificing part of my life and being extremely vulnerable in this way, because I think it goes deeper than policy. It transcends all of these issues that we have been fighting and arguing about. It's just basically, are we good people? And I know that we are. And moving forward, we want to work better together to create a safer environment for one another, and to support each other. And that's not a bad thing. Compassion is strength. And being a leader that sees things clearly from a morality perspective is not a bad thing, no matter how much people are trying to convince us of the other of otherwise, So that's that's my hope for this election, that we show that we do not tolerate this type of behavior towards people in our communities. Not here, not anywhere.
And one really quick follow up: what sets you different than Miss Wellington, who is your primary opponent?
Yeah. I'd like to say that one of my biggest strengths is that I w- I literally cannot show up any other way but truly who I am. I can't put on a mask even if I've tried. I've been this person that's so loud and honest and true and blunt my whole life. Ask my friends, ask anyone who knows me. So, what you see is what you get. You don't get the political side. There's not a moment where I say I can't speak up because of this. I'm concerned. When I say people before party, I mean that, because that is the type of leadership that we need at this point. We've been lied to, we've been misinformed, and we've been ignored. So I'm not trying to go in there and do the same thing that we've done for centuries. I am always going to speak the truth, even if I'm a little uncomfortable about it, even if I know it's going to make you a little uncomfortable, because that's what healthy conflict and healthy conversation looks like. And that is not something that I shy away from. In fact, it's something that I think we need to do more of in order to heal some of these weird preconceived notions that we have about marginalized communities and that we just have about one another. So that's what I say sets me apart. I'm just being me. And this is what you see is what you get.
Oh, hi there. Do you live in Indiana? Are you watching this video? Come on in. I'm Blythe Potter. I'm running for Secretary of State. I'm a veteran, small business owner, a mom, and a lifelong Hoosier. I'm building a grassroots campaign focusing on talking to the people, not the establishment. So help me spread the message that Hoosiers deserve better from our elected officials. Oh, hey, before you go, introduce yourself in the comments and share this with a fellow Hoosier. Bye now.
All right, Coumba, we've talked about your background, the district, and the big issues facing Noblesville and House District 29. Now it's time to shift gears a bit. This is part of the show where we move fast, no long explanations, no hedging. I'm going to throw out a series of statements. If you agree with it or support it, you say hold them. If you oppose it or think it's a bad idea, you say fold them. You can give a quick sentence if you need to, but we're keeping it tight. Are you ready?
Yes.
Indiana should increase teacher pay statewide, even if it means reallocating funds from other parts of the budget.
Hold them.
The state should place limits on how much local property taxes can rise for seniors and fixed incomes.
Hold them.
Medicaid eligibility cuts in Indiana have done more harm than good.
Hold them. Yep.
Local governments like Noblesville should have more control over zoning and development decisions, not less.
Well, yeah, hold them.
Indiana should expand access to mental health services in schools, even if it requires new state spending.
Hold them.
Large corporations receiving tax incentives from the state should be required to meet job quality and wage standards.
Yes, hold them.
Indiana's current approach to healthcare prioritizes cost savings over patient outcomes.
Yes, hold them. Sorry, I had to think about it. It does prioritize cost savings.
Public education is underfunded in the state.
Yes, hold them.
Economic growth in Hamilton County should slow down if infrastructure and housing cannot keep pace.
Hold them.
The General Assembly is too disconnected from day-to-day realities of working families.
Yep. Hold them.
Coumba, thank you for taking time to join us today. I really appreciate the conversation, your openness, and your willingness to talk honestly about the challenges facing Noblesville and